Welcome everyone to Politically High Tech with your host, Elias. This season's been generous for one reason, and I gotta say, thank God for that. I am a God believer. You could bash that or praise that all you want, it doesn't matter to me. I'm gonna say this. I've been blessed with so many new guests, some wonderful new guests as well. I think this is a season that's brought the most new guests, and I gotta say they're stepping up the game. Some of you old guests, you gotta step your game up. I don't believe in seniority and security and all of that. If you get outdated, I'm gonna toss you to the side. I know that sounds brutal to some of you, but this is a standard even for me too, because I have evolved this podcast. If you would have went back to my old days, which you have to pay for, if you want to know my embarrassing content, I have to hurt your wallet now. Okay, so that's behind a paywall now. If you want to know about how it sounded back then, I sounded so unsure. Sometimes it was even disorganized. Sometimes it was even jumbled up a little bit. Compared to now, it's more focused. It's more, you know what you're getting. Okay, and your feedback has been helpful. Feedback is important. Give me even tough feedback. I even say if this episode sucks, give me a specific reason why, or why this episode is so good. Specific feedback helps. Not just show is great. That doesn't help me. Okay, how was it great? So that's all I'm gonna say. Before I lecture you listeners to death, which I know you come here for that, I'm gonna introduce you a guest here. The one who's going to provide you, I will say, a military perspective on all this. I haven't had a guest like this yet. Not just because she's been doing this podcasting game much longer than I have, but he can provide a military perspective that most guests just can't provide. Let's just be honest. He was out there. He give his perspective was like, I don't know, dodging bullets. We're gonna dive to what that means for the uninitiated or the ignorant, if I'm gonna say that nicely. Okay. We get into other stuff. And the reason why we need to talk about geopolitics, look, it affects us one way or another. A lot of our textiles are going over there, whether you like it or not. Doesn't matter. You vote red and blue. A lot of textiles goes to these wars, okay? So, but let me cut my little random monologue short. Let me introduce you to Pete A. Turner. Okay, he's a combat I'm gonna say veteran / spy turn to a long time podcaster. Okay, that's not an easy transition. All right, not at all. So before I let you start, thank you for your service. All right, let's just get that out of the way. So give your introduction. What do you want the listeners and the viewers to know about?
The first thing I would want to say is just thanks for having me on the show, man. I know what it's like to run a show. We were talking a little bit off mic about all the challenges, and so I know what that means, and I know your time and your passion, and so I thank you for having me on and sharing that with me, because this is the new way to do media. You're doing something that ABC can't do. You can be honest, straightforward. You can allow your guests to do the same. You and I can talk, and we're not limited to a 7-minute soundbite, kind of thing. We're able to really do this. So I thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be on your show, Elias. And the other thing I would say is to all the audience, all of you all out there, thank you, because your time is valuable. And I'm going to pack as much stuff into this hour as I can, because that's what we do. That's what we do around here, man. So, Joe, thank you very much for having me on, and let's rock the house and get it going. So, what do you got for me, man? I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
Just give a little bit of who you are, your experiences and all that. Just a little introduction, however you want to do it. And one thing, let me expose this podcast real quick. 1 hour is really just a suggestion. It could go under or you can even go over. Just FYI to listeners. Go right ahead.
Well, I'm a California guy. Grew up in California. I was an athlete growing up. Nothing crazy, nothing special, but just I was an athletic kid. I rode bikes. I threw balls. I kicked stuff. I tackled people. Played hoop. All that kind of stuff. I was pretty active, and I got out of the house a lot. For me, I had a good childhood, but my dad was a bit of a problem, and so there was abuse there, and I was happier when I got away from him. He still was a good dad in a lot of ways, but there was other ways where I was just compelled to be out of the house. So that taught me just to go out and figure out how to survive. But I'm also a Gen X kid. A lot of us lived this life, where our parents worked and they came home, and when they came home, we tried to family. But, we all do things differently. So I was one of those kids, and so I had a bunch of moms growing up, and to this day, a lot of those moms still like, we still look at each other like we're family. Where they're like, "You would come over, I would make sure." And I was never starving or nothing, but moms, they want to feed you, and so I had this experience of being comfortable going to a lot of different places. I get that phone call on my phone. Hey Pete, we're gonna go play ball in this place over here at this one. Okay, great. I'd go. I'd go. It didn't matter whose neighborhood it was, and I would go out and play hoops, and you figure out how to get along with people, and so a lot of that was sort of my proving ground. I didn't know this. I didn't plan to become a spy in the army, but all of that work directly fed into how I responded to talking to criminals and looking for the nastiest drug dealers around, because I'd played basketball with a lot of those guys. I wasn't afraid of that world. And so when I was young, that was really me. I was always on the go and doing things. It's not that I didn't relax, not that I didn't goof off like any regular kid, but it'd be like, "Hey, where's Pete?" and and my folks would be like, "Oh, you're back. Okay, good." And it wasn't like they didn't know where I was, but I would be out of the house. That's how I lived, and that really related well to how I learned how to relate to people. And so that's really the essence of who I am. Is I'm someone who likes to be busy, likes to meet people, likes to try to figure it all out and be a better version of me, and maybe relate to the world what the world is seeing. That's basically who I am, man.
No, that's a very good introduction. Me, this is the privilege of the first comers. They get to be as liberal or as efficient as they want with their introductions. As times go on, especially every recurring guest, I saw okay, now I can be just a little strict on that, but we're gonna be free flowing on many other things, especially when I come up
Mhm.
with many topics. I think, in my opinion, feel free to correct me here because I never lived a Gen X. Man, I'm a millennial, so I'm a generation after.
Right.
I think it feels like y'all were the last one to actually experience a lot of the outgoing and all that. Because when we were kids, technology just started. It grew slow and then it just exploded. I think to the point
Yeah.
that, yeah, I mean, millennials were pretty social, but I don't know, but like the Gen Z and the Alphas, they're even less social, and I don't think there's a bit of a correlation with that. Too much technological advancement kind of decreases some social skills, quality, and what have you. I mean, I was studying a little bit of Gen X. I was like, oh man, I think in a way, I wish I was born a little earlier. I was like, just go out, explore, a little, wave, be home before your parents, had a little freedom before they come. I mean, I was a little envious of that. So, oh man, but hey, I'm
Yeah.
sure I was born for a reason at my time, not back then. Maybe I would have been a mischievous one. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't know. Some people think I'm an Xer sometimes the way I talk. Cause no, no, no. Let me use Gen Z slang and millennial slang just to debunk that. No, no, no. I got plenty of that. But yeah, yeah, no, that's good to know. So now let's get to the. I don't talk about this enough, and I'm shocked when I looked at my podcast collection. I haven't really talked about the Iraq War, about how it was like and what lessons should we learn from it.
Mm.
I say it was. I mean, everybody can almost agree it was a disaster. It doesn't have to be a partisan thing. Even the exit was chaotic and people died along the way. What's your perspective for it? What lessons can we learn from it?
The big lessons I would say is if we're going to go somewhere, we have to take it seriously. We did take it seriously, but we didn't do the professional job of being professionals at whatever it was that we were doing. And so and I say that because I got a chance to examine how we did things every day. And I would be in the meeting room and we would say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's what's going to happen. Here's why we're doing all that stuff. And it didn't measure up. So like we would have, let's say like, hey, we've started a crime lab. Okay, great. Yeah, great. Who's going to jail because of crime lab, evidence being brought forth in the court? Oh, well, nobody. Okay, so nobody's going to jail because of the crime. Well, who's using and submitting stuff to the crime lab? Oh, well, I mean, there's bomb makers, and we kind of compel the Iraqis to process the information, but no, they're not. They're not going to court and going to jail either. It's not working. And so we would tell ourselves that, hey, we established these crime labs, and we were doing all this fancy stuff. When that briefs well, and this is kind of in general when I see the government in general. Oh, that briefs well, right? Like, who's going to say, "Oh, I don't want to feed starving kids," or I don't want to worry about cancer. But then what are you going to do about it? And then is that thing you're doing, is that working? And too often the question was no. The answer was no. So you would look at like we would establish a fire department. Okay, when was you guys' last call? Oh no, nobody ever calls us. Wait, you're in Iraq. You're here to help Iraqis. This is their fire department. If they don't call you, no. So I go into town and I talk to the locals. I talk to the sheikhs. I talk to the government leaders. How come nobody calls the fire department? Oh, those guys aren't a real fire department. Aren't they though? Isn't that I saw their fire trucks? Like, yeah, that's your guys' fire truck. It's really nobody will ever call that. And so it was the police, fire, education, all these different entities within the government, they were all failing at some level. And so when we try to understand why it failed is because we quite often didn't act like folks who were desperate to succeed at that. We fought a lot of combat, we patrolled a lot, we did a lot of things well, but when push and shove came together, we struggled because we didn't understand what the fight was, and our priorities were mixed up because of that. So, I wouldn't say it was a total disaster because today Iraq doesn't have an emperor like they had, with Saddam Hussein. They have an elected parliament, and they work in that model. They didn't go the direction we wanted them to, but that's sort of the cost of business, right? Like they're going to go their own way, and they're trying to figure it out. We put a lot of things on the Iraqis that was wrong. We said that it was sectarian violence. They didn't care about religion when we got there. They care now. They care now because they had to survive, and other interests came in, especially Iran, and they sought to undermine Iraq's success. So the a thing we didn't understand was Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Iraq are the three big, meaty, heavyweights in that area. And Iran and Saudi Arabia would work together to undermine the strength of Iraq, because if Iraq is weaker and less Western, then those two can rise to preeminence, and they could take out one of their peers. And so that's what they strove to do, and they did that pretty well. So they infiltrated, inculcated, and started to divide Iraq up, and we went along with it, and we got things wrong far too often. And so how do you have a professional force? Well, if you're going to create a library system in Iraq, I'm just saying library system, pick any kind of system we want, you should understand the condition of the people and their desire for a library and the need for it. Just because it briefs well, who wants to be against a library, right? Well, let's start with, do they need a library? Is anybody in town screaming for one? Is anybody denied access to books? Does anybody care about access to books? And if the answer to those questions are all no, well, that's where the work begins. How do you create a desire to have a thing like a library? Or do you do something else? The thing you need is fresh water and sewer. Okay, great. Well, then let's work on that instead of working on libraries or women's rights or, trans rights or any of these other things that are not just tertiary, they're like quintiary in the problem mix, right? So you can't focus on these small things before society's ready to do it. We did a lot of it.
There's a lot of things I did not hear. I didn't hear about the parliament. You see, this is why it's so good to talk to different people. Because TV, look, of course, I had to pull out of a source. Yeah, TV say it was it was a disaster. It wasted a lot of money. I mean, you already said there was problems with it. You're not saying it was like a whole perfect picture and all of that. I mean, everyone would have just called out was all BS. But you did mention some success. You said the parliament that they have. Of course,
Mhm.
the down will stay is down. We can't forget that, people. We tend to forget the good. I think that's just a human condition.
Yeah.
We always point out the bad right away, and that's unfortunate. And sadly, I even fall for that because I'm human. We all human. So unless I want to, I don't know, be perfectly in sync with my spirit or be dead, that's the only way it's gonna stop. But no, I plan to be alive for a bit longer and be your fellow wacky human being. So you're gonna deal with me for a while, unless God has a different answer, which so far I doubt it. That's all I'm gonna say. So far, just be as humble as I can, because look, even though we're humans and all that, we're interesting, we're great, we're bad, we're all these things, but you don't know when your time is up. So I'm just be serious on that. Um, no, so that's interesting. Yeah, so they have a parliament. That I would say that's progress. That's
Yeah.
a pretty big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that means they're going
It's one of the
towards
main
a
goals.
more different. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's a very big success.
Yeah.
I don't wanna, foreshadow that or make it light. That's a big deal. I
Yeah.
don't see a lot of that in on the Middle East. You don't know, they only have like kings and dictators you have you, and they rule almost unilaterally, and they just put their will on the people. Look, okay, no woman could drive. Women got to be accompanied by men.
Yep.
I know Saudi Arabia has gotten a little more liberal, but that's still the general culture over there. Generally speaking, and it's not changing anytime soon, the way I understand it. So, and this is why I say, sadly, to some the progressive people. Trust me, I'm going to bash the conservative people later. You can't be putting stuff like women's rights and all of these other rights when you can't have when fundamental problems
Yeah.
emerge or got even worse. I agree with. That's a pragmatic point of view. Once we get a lot of the basics done, and then we could focus on all those other stuff. He didn't say disregard it. He just say you can't be focused on these. I would say more like first world issues when
Right.
you're having basic issues that needs to be addressed. I mean, sure, let's just say the American economy has become a third world country. You think we're going to be worried about some of these issues we're talking about? No, that's going to be pushed to the side, okay? For most people, because they're going to worry about survival. Let's just be honest. Once America, let's say, if it comes to third world hellhole, it's going to become, we can just focus on survival. We're going to forget about these trans issues, women issues, all this other stuff. We just focus on survive, okay? We'll go on survival mode. So the fact that we could debate these kind of issues is a sign that we're still doing all right. Okay, people, rather you agree with me or not, rather, that's your priority or not, that's irrelevant when shit hits the fan. Okay,
Yeah.
so to speak. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Not that they're not important. It's just, let's be, stop having your head in the sand, people. All right. And I'm sure some of you conservatives are cheering, but you're going to focus on survival too. Believe me, you ain't gonna be fair about the trans rights. No, you ain't gonna be fair about that either. So I'll bash you as well. As a proud independent who is not a fan of both Democrats and Republicans. I don't hate you all, but I'm just very critical of both parties. Right, because you both have done your part on damaging this country. You both are guilty, as far as I'm concerned. And the independents have been shoved out. They're not at fault. They don't have power to begin with. Okay, so that's all I want to say before I keep on yammering. So, anything else you want to add about the Iraq lessons that we need to learn that most people are not even talking about?
Sadly, it's kind of fading from our view because it's been over for long enough that we don't really care about it, right? We'd only care about if it was on fire, like when ISIS was raging through there. Then we cared about it. But yeah, if we're gonna go somewhere and help, it's on us to be responsible to help. And so while we did get a good number of things right, we got far too many things we were able to get right, but we didn't because we didn't prepare properly. So when we go to these places, it's going to be hyper expensive. We probably should have taken an interest in oil to help offset some of the costs to help stand this country up. We might have left on better terms, and I don't know that we left on good or bad terms, kind of indifferent terms, but we definitely had enough. And part of that was because we weren't succeeding at a rate that anybody understood. It probably always would have been that way, but yeah, these things are hard. They're deeply complex, and it's like right now with this Hamas conflict against Israel. Israel's an actual nation in the world. Hamas and Palestine are not, and so we're trying to understand how to get these two places that have never gotten along to get along. And I'm gonna say every president has tried to solve this problem, and both sides say they don't want a two-state solution. They don't want that. So when we force that on them, it's not likely to stick. So will this peace accord work? Man, I hope so. And not because of Donald Trump, but because I don't want people to die and I don't want people to have to live in conflict. But the chances are, because they've fought forever over that little hunk of land, that it won't hold, right? And so I know people are positive right now, and maybe it'll hold the next 20 years, and that would be a blessing. These things are hard. They are exceptionally hard. And the fact that we're the one nation that can weld enough other countries together to go solve these problems is powerful. We just need to get better, even just a little bit better at getting a country from deep conflict to less conflict to fledgling to stability, and slowly walk our way up the scale of success. We can all point to the examples that worked, but they worked for a lot of different reasons. And that model is tougher to do you know, they call it the East, the Orient, and the Occident for a purpose because they're different places. And that was the way they used to describe it. But the Mid East is not an easy place to sort out. And if you get it wrong and you won't admit it and you won't improve, then we become the problem. And we did a lot of that. Not just the main thing. So it's not just because of a president or a thing. It's just an overall underestimation of how complex these things are, a lack of professional credentials to do the work that we wanted to do, a lack of attendance. You can't just do this stuff in 90 days, which is really, by my count, about how much time a unit would be successful at advancing the ball. And they'd give all that back because they had to leave. And nobody by design ever came. So let's say I deployed to Iraq and I was in Baghdad. The next time I deployed, I probably wouldn't be in Baghdad. I'd be somewhere else. I'd be in the South. I'd be in the West. And so all of a sudden you've never been to the same place twice, and you've never been in the same job twice. You've graduated away from that job as you've promoted, and that didn't reliably work. And then there's the State Department, and they're awful at this stuff. We want them to be, and maybe at the highest level that they can get some people to nod yes, but they're completely irrelevant at the ground level. And when people are fighting over, and get this, when people are fighting over water and electricity, here's some words I learned how to say in there. But I just speak a lot of Arabic, but two of the key words was they would say maku mai, maku karaba. So the electricity and the water were bad everywhere. Now, what nation on the earth can be stable without electricity and water as reliable resources? Now, how do we not fix that from the start? That's, you know, then you can work on women's issues, right? When there's electricity and water, when there's not, I mean, wherever you live right now, like if you turn the electricity off or it was on intermittently in a place that's 120 degrees, do you think people would get along in your neighborhood, or would we be scrambling for things all the time and always feel uncertain? There's no way to run like here in California when the local electrical facility, when it turns off for whatever reason, we lose our minds an instant after the lights go out. What is going on? Why is this happening? Right? These guys live like that all the time.
You're saying some wise stuff. And look, people, I care for you as a human being, but I don't care for your emotions as much. This is true. Look, let's just say a blackout happens in New York City, where I'm at.
Yeah.
Millions will lose their minds in an instant, and some will dare break glass and windows. I'll take it a step further, and there'll be some fighting and some rioting and looting. All right, and it has happened. The blackout 2003. There was some of that going on. So, and that was one day,
Yeah,
24
one day.
hours, and yeah,
Yeah.
so it really got crazy. You could imagine
Yeah.
that being prolonged for a week. Forget about a month. I'm
Yeah.
not going to go that far. I'll
Or
say a week.
indefinitely.
And
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or if the power came on
oh,
intermittently, so you might get 2 minutes and then get none for 2 hours. You might get 2 hours and then get none for 18 minutes. And so when mama's trying to make dinner and she's using electricity and all of a sudden that stops, does the house get better or worse when mama's not happy? Like it, that perforated power was exhausting for them. And this is a nation full of oil. This one farmer said the greatest thing to me. He said, "You guys know everything. You have all the money in the world. Why don't we have a high tension electric grid all throughout this nation?" And he pointed at the ground. He's like, "I can light the dirt in my yard on fire because there's so much oil in it. And we can't figure out how to turn that into electricity. You guys couldn't think to do that after spending $1 trillion." These aren't my words. Those are his words. And I'm just like writing that down in my book. Yep. Because they are great questions. Why didn't we have a nationwide electric grid? Yes, it takes time to do it. Yes, it's dangerous work. We get all of that. But if you don't have that, if you can't convert that oil-filled dirt into power throughout the nation, man, you can't succeed. You already started on a program that's wrong.
oh man, people. Just that's a common section activity. Just imagine you have power for a day. I'm just gonna lower it to that because I already pointed the most recent example, and that was me as a teenager, aging myself on exactly. I was in Connecticut. I avoided that, but I did saw news reports about what was going on in New York City at that time. People were acting up. They weren't calm. Some were worried. Some were anxious. Some were pissed off. And some just took advantage of the situation. Let me get that free TV, whatever they wanted, okay? And look, probably it's a little dramatic, but you get the point. People are just going to be very, very anxious. I mean, some people did enjoy it. There was some people that found entertainment out of it. Maybe some of the kids did, weirdly to say. But as a nation, we would just lose our mind, especially now that we are super dependent. I was 2003. I can imagine now we're even more dependent on this stuff than before. So I think we'll just kill each other. I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm just going to say it straight. We will kill each other. We will kill each other because we are just no, forget soaps. We are super dependent on this stuff. Extremely dependent. This is sadly people's livelihood. Yeah, so yeah, people just kill each other. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just gonna say it straight, uncensored. Whether you like it or not, that's your comment activity right there. If you think the host is crazy, go right ahead. Put it in the comment section. Just remember, don't be too spicy on YouTube. On Rumble, anything practically goes. You're not going to get censored unless you say something ultra heinous. I think only very few people did. But Rumble is generally, your 1A is more protected on that platform than YouTube. I'm just going to. All right. I mean, I don't know, people. You want to go to a survival camp or something? Just in case this happens? I don't know. That's something to think about. If we lose electricity, I'm not saying for you to be like an army brat. I don't know how to make fires and hunt an animal, skin it, all that. Personally, I'll be interested in that because what if this darn thing happens for even 5 hours? Who the heck knows? And learn how to disinfect and all that, relying on nature and things like that. I don't know, people. I may sound a little crazy, but you know what? Crazy people are sometimes right. Just saying, when shit hits the fan, crazy people are right. I don't know. Just saying. Just think about it. Just think about it. All right. Let's continue with this Israel and Hamas. This is the more current issue that we are dealing with. And this is the one that so many minds, this is why our psyche, the collective is paying attention to. Saturday night, the Iraq war. And I was like, oh, that's like so 10 years ago. Who cares? Oh, this is why we continue to be dumb as a nation. Oh, we're not going to learn those lessons, but we're going to continue this craziness. And look, just like you, I want peace. I want those nations to get along, and but all I gotta say is I think they need to take out the source of chaos. That's just me. My opinion is I think Hamas just needs to go. Could I be right or wrong? I don't know, but that's just me. And I think and if Israel wants peace in their end, they need to boot Benjamin Netanyahu. That's just me as a centrist. But that's a spicy take for some. I didn't say Jews are evil. I didn't say anything like that. I just say Benjamin Netanyahu and that government just needs to go because they're also part of the problem, in my opinion. And there's plenty of Israelis at their homeland protesting against that. So you can't say I'm anti-Semite. You could smear me with that all you want, but look, I'm critical even with the Hamas government as well. They're violent. They continue to hold the people hostage. I hope a peace deal comes. I really want to because, look, a lot of people have died. Plenty of Israelis, plenty of Palestinians have been killed. And the more this goes on, we're going to have more casualties. It's just basic. You don't need to be in the field just to know this stuff. But I think just if you really want to experience the chaos and all, and God bless your brave soul. I don't think I would unless it came to me. Then that's a different story. But do I want to go there just for the thrill of just see what war is like? Most sane people would say hell no. Just just being honest, just hell no on that. So anything you want to add about the Israeli Hamas conflict that most people are just not paying attention to?
The first thing to understand is whatever you think you know about it, you don't know enough because none of us do. And I know a lot. I know a lot of people that know a lot, and I've had them on my show. I know someone who was deep on the inside of the negotiations between Hamas and the United States because that's what has to happen first, right? Because someone's got to guarantee this agreement. And he had said well over a year ago that we'd be at the spot we are at now once they got everybody ready to be in this spot, right? So he knows a lot of it. He disagrees deeply with other experts in the area that have spoken out about this conflict. So I understand that even the most knowledgeable, most inside people and that means they've been around for more than one presidency, right? So it's hard. And the next thing I would say is understand what Hamas did. They took a lot of money that was meant for Palestinians and they killed them with it. And they built a war machine in and around the people so that whatever the Israelis did, that they would harm Gazans, right? They did that on purpose because they wanted that shock value. They wanted that genocide. And our press, not you, not me, but the big press like ABC are desperate to run to that story because it sells Cadillacs. It gets the shock value that you need. It gets the rage bait going. So any legitimate press person would say, I used a source, they burned me, they lied to me, and we had to do a full retraction. Never going to that person again. That is not what ABC does. You can disagree with me about that, but the fact is every time they said Hamas Ministry of Health, they got lied to, or they willingly ran to that story on purpose. You can decide which one of those is true, but they got burned again and again and again. I'm thinking about specific examples now. They got burned so many times. When I see those stories break, Israeli forces do this atrocity, and I'm like, I'll prepare for the retraction. And I watch and I monitor it. And of course it comes out. And it's not just ABC. I'm just using them as a proxy for all of these. But they repeatedly got burned by citing a terrorist organization's, and I'm going to use quoting fingers, Minister of Health. They don't have a Ministry of Health. They're a terrorist organization. That's what they are. And so when you rely on those folks to tell you what's going on, like I did a better job on myself. I know people who worked on the ground. I've interviewed them on my show. It's not hard to do. It's just not hard to do. I don't get paid to do it. Imagine if I got paid to do it. Then I could do an even better job of telling you what is actually happening. I'm not absolving Israel of any fault that they may have, but we're starting. This is the second thing we're starting with here is Hamas has purposely built an information operation into their war because they know they can't beat Israel toe to toe. They had to beat them in the court of political or public opinion. And they've done a great job of that. So much so that you have queer people hyping Hamas who would kill them in an instant if they were there. They wouldn't tolerate them. They're very, very intolerant. That doesn't mean that all of Palestine is full of people like that, but it's a different world. And to equate your values with their values would be wrong, just like they wouldn't equate their values with ours. They would look at us differently. And when they call us the big Satan, you better believe it. But it's not an Islamic thing necessarily, but there are a lot of people in Palestine that hate us, they hate Israel, and they want to see both things die, right? So that is a real part of the problem, that there can't be a two-state solution. Maybe today there's going to be, maybe, but after a lot of killing and bloodshed. The other thing that we have to accept about Hamas is that any war is a battle of wills. And as long as Hamas was willing to go out and fight and not surrender, this war was going to continue. Because Israel gets to say, hey, you sucker punched us. We don't trust you. We're never going to trust you. They get to say that. And we would do the same thing. And Germany would do the same thing. And so when we look at this, we have to understand what Hamas is and what they have been and what they want as a stated goal. And if we're for that, then great. Then you're on the side of Hamas, and maybe it'll go that way. But they haven't, until very, very recently, really sat down and got to work on how they surrender power from the government, because everybody agrees that Hamas cannot be in power in Palestine, and we're going to work hard to guarantee that through a lot of people's careers are going to change and focus on trying to stabilize that region. So let's start there. The next thing about Hamas is they started this version of this war. There were other ways to go about this. They ran out of words. They built a war machine. They popped the cork and said, let's go. Let's have war. And they got it. And they got it handed to them. And the region and its proxies aligned against Israel. And Israel had that ass all the way around. If you wanted to die real quick, go fight the IDF. Go. The Mossad infiltrated in ways that I'm amazed at the operations they had. The other day, an Israeli official said, there's no rabbit in the hat. Nobody's got a rabbit in their hat. And then like the next day, Israel popped into the cork on another operation. So they had a rabbit in their hat because they always do. And that makes the whole world look around going, where's Mossad in our government? And we all freak out about that. After the little skirmish that killed a lot of people in Iran, the Iranian government went out and killed a bunch of Iranians because they didn't know where the leaks were. So they just started killing people. These are the people that other people are trying to defend. Iran is in a tough spot. They don't get along well with the world and the way the world wants them to go. And that's because the U.S. is cross with them. And I don't know how they get out of the spot that they're in. But all of this ties into Hamas. And when that kind of thing happens, it's very hard to point the finger at anybody in a negative way. Again, I'm not absolving Israel of bad behavior, but from a lot of points of view and people that I know that study the Israeli part of this war, and they study modern war for a living, Israel has been as diligent or more diligent than the US in how they deal with the civil population in a war where the civil population is woven into the war machine. And they've done their best to try to prevent these things. Never forget that Jordan, Egypt, they wouldn't take any Gazans. They wouldn't allow them in their country. And guess what? That's all agreed to ahead of time. Hamas doesn't care about those things. They wanted those people to die. And so they fed them into a meat grinder. They did steal aid. They did sell that aid back to people. All of these things actually happened. So before we get mad at Israel, and let's get mad at Israel, but we have to understand all those things about Hamas and what they have built. And had they decided to simply get along and become a modern country and got rid of that, and I don't know how they do this, get rid of their grudge against the Israelis, and they could have had look at the property they have. Oh my God, that coast on the Mediterranean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And all they've got to do is just set up shop, start building hotels, and people will flock there. But they don't want that. They would rather tear themselves apart, kill their citizens, than to have a Mediterranean coast where they can host people and make delicious food. It's one of the most perfect places on the earth for weather. And that's not enough for them. So, when I look at the whole conflict, it's such an unnecessary thing, but it was inevitable. We had to do this, and we had to throw a certain amount of people into the meat grinder and eliminate them from the world. And when this thing first started, I said, there's a chance that Palestinians will walk the earth without a nation, because Israel's not going to stop until they choose to, and they'll defy anybody. They'll kill anybody in any country. The fact that they went and blew people up in another country, that's nothing new for them, because they have to fight that way. Because look at everybody, how fast everybody arrayed against them. People from Yemen were trying to lob rockets into their country. Yemen's nowhere near Israel. That's the level of hatred that region has for Israel. And a long time ago, because we said so, because we saw what happened in Germany during the Holocaust, we said, nope. And a lot of laws were passed to force people to obey and abide and allow Israel to exist and Jews to live. And when we forget that atrocity and what it took, and how hard our grandparents and great-parents and great-great-grandparents fought to free and eliminate that harm from ever happening again, when we forget that as easily as we have, when people run to the anti-Semite bell and go, ding, 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 include me, publicly doing that, man, I'll tell you what, I'll worry about Israel later. But these people don't want to allow Israel to exist. I'm not down with that. Because my grandfather went out and he fought a war, and he made sure that stuff didn't have to happen anymore. And it's our job to guarantee it. And people get to make bad decisions in countries. Israel can, Palestinians can, we can. But you don't get to decide that you want to eviscerate an entire nation of people because what? Because of a saying, river to the sea? No, that ain't going to happen. And so when you go toe to toe with another nation, the nation that you want to eliminate, and they get that ass over and over and over and over and over again, you got to stack arms and go home and go think of something else or die, one of the two. And so when President Trump now says, hey, you got a short amount of time to make this work, if you don't, because we already know to not trust them. Palestinians walked away from a deal a number of times. I'm talking historic pens and paper on the table, and they're like, nah, we're not going to sign up to have our own country. That's why there isn't a Palestine, because they've walked away from that deal over and over and over again. Has Israel misbehaved? Yes. But understand why this happened and how it happened and how they wanted it to happen. Those are the main things. We can get mad about that. We can disagree about that. We can pick nits about it all you want. But the fact is, Hamas still, to this minute, has not agreed that they need to not be in power in Palestine, even though all other neighbors now are saying, you're not going to be in charge anymore. So hopefully this thing gets sorted out, because far too many people have died, and far too many other people have run to the side of the terrorists and said, sign me up. I want to be with those guys. And that baffles me on why they would do that. You should be against war in general because it's awful. But the amount of abuse and pain and suffering that's still going to come for generations because of this war, and it's all on Hamas. They're the ones that started it. They're the ones that exacerbated it. They're the ones that built this war machine on purpose. And the only way to solve this thing was to whack a lot of people. And Israel obliged them, because here's the thing. Israel gets to believe that whole region is against them. They get to believe that they want to kill Israelis. And so Israel acted accordingly. And I have a saying that's pretty good, I think. But people that don't want to die act like it. And the opposite is true too. People that want to die act like it. Go start a war with Israel and see how long you survive. That's what Hamas did, and there's a lot of dead Hamas people because of it. So those are my basic thoughts. But it's a shame, it's terrible, and unfortunately, it was inevitable. There was no way to avoid this thing happening. Here we are.
Yep. Well, another comment section activity. Do you want to disagree with that? I mean, I think it was based on facts. I have to be honest. It's hard to even dispute it. But for those pro-Palestinian people, you want to comment and disagree with this? You say, "Oh, you're enabling the Jew terrorists." There's a comment section for you right there. Just remember, wait till this goes on Rumble if you fear that YouTube is going to cancel you. I don't believe in canceling you. That's YouTube's job, not mine. Okay, so if you want to blame that on me, you'll be foolish. Look, I welcome any opinions. I have a couple of Muslim guests that voice their concerns and ask some legitimate questions. I try to be as fair minded as I can be, but let's. The facts are Hamas needs to be gone, though. That's just an irrefutable fact, and I never swayed away from it. I said, yeah, they are I would say the root of the problem, and anyone else who has these terrorist groups that attack Israel. I mean, they're fighting multiple fronts of wars every day. We know about the Israel and Hamas one, but they fight multiple fronts. I think they was even fighting Hezbollah, the Houthis, Syria. I mean, it's not just Hamas. Let's just be clear. They're fighting multiple fronts of war because of the amount of hatred that these people got. I mean, that's a fact. You could be critical of Israel. I welcome that as well. Um, but look, war is messy and ugly. And to be honest, if you want to put that criticism, criticize America how we conducted some of the wars. We were sloppy. We killed plenty of innocent people as well. Would I agree with that? Yeah, but you know what's the sad part? No matter how careful you try to do war, people are just gonna die, even innocent people. That's just the unfortunate reality. That's why me personally, I try to prevent war as much as possible because innocents are going to be caught in a crossfire. No matter how careful you are, no matter how moral you are, it's just going to happen. I mean, Hamas is a brilliant example. They have interwoven into the civilian populace. That's why so many of them died. I'm not saying oh, they get a free pass. No, it's just it's war, and I'm sure they tried their best on Israel. I mean, maybe they could have been more careful. I'm sure there's criticism there, but it's sadly it's war. War, you're not thinking, and just like you said, I want to quote you said, Israel has enough rational fear, not paranoia, rational fear that the whole region is against them. They
Yeah.
probably can't even tell for who's the difference between a Hamas terrorist and a civilian. And even some of the Hamas people have pointed the gun to those innocent people try to run away. So they forcing them there. I mean, I got multiple accounts of that as well. So it's wrong. It's very bloody, and innocent people from both, not just Palestinians, even Israel too, with October 7th and even other skirmishes, they've been killed as well. So I'm trying to be as fair as I could be, but there's some facts that are undeniable. And let me just criticize some groups that, especially queers for Palestine, live there. Do you think they're gonna treat you as good as America? Maybe even Israel for that fact. Like Tel Aviv, I heard Tel Aviv is very liberal in their culture. Try it. Just try it. Not that all Palestinians are homophobic. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure there's some that hold that belief. Definitely Hamas does, and they will kill you as soon as they get the opportunity. That's a reality. Careers for Palestine. Think. It's like mixing water and oil together. It just doesn't. Look, I'm trying to look out for you. All right. You could say I'm homophobic all you want. I think you're suicidal to disagree with me on this one. But hey,
Let me
it's your
let me
life.
amplify that
Go ahead.
because I would say something like oil and water. I'd say it's like a match and oil. Think about like if you were, and I'm no problem. Everybody should live how they should live. I have no problem with anybody who's queer, gay, but I don't care. I want you to be well. I want you to be happy and thrive, right? And this is one thing that's great in this country is that you can. But if you were queer and I said, hey, we're going to move to the South, they'd lose their minds because they'd be terrified of what was going to happen to them. Okay, it's worse. It's worse in the Middle East. You may find someone who likes you, but you may not like how they like you, and that's a real thing. So when we say these things and you lie because you think that you're on the same side, you are not. You are not on the same side. You're culturally ignorant to what the world is like over there. And again, I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody, but if you couldn't handle South Alabama, you're not going to like the West Bank. You're not gonna like it.
Yeah, to me, I'm gonna use video game terms. The South, that's tutorial level. If you can't handle that, you're definitely not gonna handle the I would say the final level or an advanced level of hate. Okay, that's
And I'm not talking bad
I
about the
say,
South. I'm just using examples I've
yeah.
heard from people, like, I think the
There's
South is
pockets of
great.
them that are still like that. Yeah, no, they're
Yeah.
they're great. They're great. I'm not bashing them, but if you can't handle, just a little sneer and talking bad about you, or you're saying to your face that you're the F word that rhymes with hag, you know, you ain't ready for the
Mhm.
hatred on the other side of the world. That it's just a fact. It's just a fact. I mean, look, you could not like what I'm saying here. That's totally fine. I care about you as a human being, but your emotions, I could care less. To me, that's not as important. And I care I would say in a manly, tough kind of way. Listen, I say like it is. I try to keep it straight, and sometimes it requires hurting your feelings and ruffling your feathers. But if you're wise, you understand what I'm saying, then you say, "Oh, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Elias, for being, straight shooters." Or just say like that. They'll use a little bit of a gunslinging terms here and just telling you, just being honest. And people want honesty, but by the time you get it, you get offended. You can't have it both ways. Can't have it both ways. You could feel the way you want to feel, but at least try to process what we are telling you here. And I gotta say, a lot of stuff he's saying is not misinformation or things like that. These can be easily backed by simple Google researches, believe it or not. It's not the best thing, but it can be easily backed up. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Ooh, we touched a lot there. That was you already provide a lot of value. So mission accomplished on that, especially on both the Iraq, but definitely the Israel Hamas thing. I think people need to be reminded because I think some commentators and certain political orientation does give Hamas a pass, maybe unintentionally, but they do give them a bit of a pass. And that's mind-boggling to me. I was like, you gotta know what the enemy is. And especially those that want Jews to be wiped out. They're the true anti-Semites. And I love that you tie that in with what happened in Germany. And let me just throw a disturbing statistic. Again, 25% of the young generation think the Holocaust is a hoax. So we need to remind people that again before that becomes 50% or to the point that there's no return right there. When I saw the statistic, I was already immediately. I said, "Wow, we are
Sure.
forgetting our history as fast as us consuming 1,000 memes per day." That's disturbing, in my opinion. That's just very disturbing. And once we forget history, we condemn to repeat it, or I'm gonna add a little spice or do even worse.
Yeah.
All right. Enough lecturing here. I know this is heavy for a lot of you. But you know what? You're adults here. And if you got a kid here and this kid's brain is scrambled, that's your fault as an incompetent parent. Okay? All right. I think we already said enough about that. And I'm happy that you actually laid out so much things I think that people need to understand before. Rather you have your opinion, if not, that's fine. Just don't distort. Don't even don't try to even dismiss facts or twist them. Okay. I think we pissed off Riverside. That's what happened.
Is that what happened?
I don't know, that's my conspiracy theory. They becoming more
Uh,
pro Palestine. I don't
that's
know. A
right.
lot
They
of
don't
them are
like
just
it.
saying they need to be a state.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I don't know if that
That's
was
all
me or
right.
you or what, but who knows?
I don't know what happened. What happened there? It definitely wasn't me. I will not do that unless I give like warnings. I say, you know what, this is gonna be a shit episode. I'll cut this thing off. I'll give warnings. But nah, I think that's what happened. I'm gonna go with that conspiracy theory.
Right.
All right, so he's back. Riverside got offended. Says they're pro-European and they become more Palestinian sympathizers, unfortunately. I'm not totally against it, but you got to get rid of the terrorist element of it at least, and then maybe maybe change what happened, and maybe yeah, I'm sure a lot more needs to be done, but that's for starters. Get rid of the terrorist element. I'm not gonna pretend I have all the answers, but if you want to do that with Hamas being there, that's just foolish. Just put it nicely, just very very foolish. Alrighty then. Okay, we had to go that's far, but no, but let's talk about podcasting because look, this guy, he's not a new kid in the block. He's done
Really?
over 1,000 episodes, and just what's the most basic question I come up with? How you reach that milestone? What kept you going? You could have just
And
said after the 200th episode, I'm done.
it's 2000 plus. I quit counting months ago, and I'm not going to count anymore. Well, at some point, you've just done it, right? You've reached the point where production is no longer the problem, and you just get good at it. How does someone become a black belt and do all them crazy kicks? Well, they get in the dojo and they get to work. And so that's what I do. I do it. And how does someone go out and swim 5 miles? Well, first you learn how to swim, then you learn how to swim 10 feet, then you learn how to swim a mile, and you just keep going. And I have the ability. I've developed the skills to book people, to post shows, to look at the technology and figure out what's best for me. I've just kept at it, man. And anybody who does anything is going to get better at doing that thing. But we don't all get to go and be that thing. And so whether it's bodybuilding or any discipline, that's what it is. And I got in early. I got in over 10 years ago, and we started and we've kept at it. And man, the journey has been crazy. I mean, the fact that I can reliably get on all kinds of shows. Thank you for having me on again. But you know, I've got so many interesting things to talk about, and I can translate that into interesting things for guests, and as well as people who are watching on a show. I get to do that now, and that's what comes with that discipline. Is there's a lot of rewards. I get called on to come do things, to speak at places, to help advise on things, because people know that if it comes down to production, like if they can handle everything else, but they need some help with the production, well, that's me. And I'm just going to come in there and do the job, because for me, it's not even work. It's like, no, let me help you make something out of this. And that's what my show has become, is this powerful networking tool that creates opportunities. It's on me to figure out how to realize the opportunity, but yeah, it's an amazing thing. So by just simply showing up, getting better, having, we talked about it earlier, all the wounds that come with this, like Wi-Fi going down for who knows, whatever reason, right? And knowing that, and it's all right. That's all right. I've had shows that are terrible where the sound dropped out for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. You just keep going, and the bulk of the work will always be in your favor. And that's how I did it. Was I just realized that no matter what, as long as I kept going, I would have an incredible life, and I do. I need to make more money, and there's all kinds of aspirational things that I want to do. But my show has changed my life in a way that nothing else in my life ever has. I mean, obviously, my daughter is at the top of the list, but beyond that, professionally, it's the show, because it just is packed full of rewards, and you know this because you get to talk to all these great people. And it's an amazing to join that fraternity that you're of your show, and having my own show. It's just like, it's incredible. Like I said, I know someone who wrote most of the current piece of chord that they're trying to get through. That's amazing. How did I get to know that person? Well, I have this show, and those are the rewards that come with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, mine is definitely more humble compared to yours. It's 5 years in, definitely already have over 300 episodes out, and it came from trial and error. Find out what works, or grow, evolve. A simple tip I could give you, but don't treat this. This is my advice. I'm going to get heat from this. Don't treat this like a hobby. Treat this like a professional business, or that's my tip, because that's the
Yeah.
trap I fell for my first 2 seasons. I was treating it more like a hobby. That's why I started treating it more like a business, professional development. Then I started to evolve. Think about, how can I improve this? I even became
Right.
self-critical, probably almost to a fault sometimes. It's okay. What can I improve? What will people say? I was okay. Sound wasn't the greatest.
Mhm.
Okay, took care of that. Lighting on my face wasn't the greatest. Wanted to point that out. Now I got me a light. I got me my studio light, and I started decorating this plain wall. It was two planes. Now I got maps, and then if you check further, if you put this widescreen, if I allow you to, because some episodes I don't, you will see the guest name and plants. These are just things that they weren't specific on that, but I'll just say, okay, just add something to decorate it. All right.
Yeah.
Just went my way, and don't be offended with feedback. Even some of them will be nasty about it. Just know that they're just keyboard warriors and not tough people. They're just internet trolls. Once you step away from the internet, they have no power over you. Okay, that's the thing. You got to develop some thick skin. Don't be,
Yeah.
no, don't do it to a point that you're gonna just reject all feedback. Oh, I'm better. You're not only your help. No, don't. That's all I'm saying. Just when you know someone's spewing nonsense, ignore it.
Yeah.
Ignore it because you're gonna be so busy working on your craft that you're not gonna have time to address such idiocy. Okay, so I'm just gonna say it like that.
So true.
But it
It's
is
so true.
true, you know. So that's why I gotta say it's a podcast. And one of the business guys who's more happy go lucky disagrees with me on that. Oh, that one me him got more of a verbal spat. But I uploaded because it was entertaining. I was like, you know, that one was gonna be good. That one was gonna be like fun, chillax kind of, you know, chill vibes, or everyone call laid back kind of conversation. It was more like a happy confrontation. I said, no, you need to be strong on this. No, you need to get better. This is not just no, this is not for everybody. And I was more militant compared to him, but I'm not gonna compare. I'm not gonna compete with Peter on that one. He's far more militant than I am. But the business guy was definitely more militant than him. But I said, no, 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 no. This is not for everybody. You know, you could take it. I'd say you could take those weaklings with you. I don't need weak followers. You got to be willing to say no to even some guests and even certain people because come on, you don't want neo Nazis to support you. That's problematic. Anyone with a sane mind. Let's just use that for example. I certainly would not. I say you could go shove that money where the sun don't shine. I don't want it. All right. So that you know that's a pretty drastic example, but you get what I'm talking about. My listeners, my loyal listeners, I'm not worried about you. You're intelligent. You even give me good critical points, constructive criticism, and you know, and I actually appreciate that. Instead of just say, "Oh, I'm amazing and great." That's nice. What is that going to do? That's just going to boost my ego. And I can have an ego sometimes. So don't feed that too much. Keep that part starving. Okay. Say that. Just keep me in my lane, people. Because if my ego goes high, let's just say that you know about certain people got their egos high. Rather you like Trump or not, that's a good example of high ego. And there's definitely other politicians on the other side that have high ego. I would say Obama has a certain level of high ego, and definitely Biden. Definitely Biden. He had a high ego. I mean, he should have not ran for a second term. But that's just a spicy opinion. But that to me, that's true. I mean, he barely survived to the first one. But hey, let me just end in that spicy note. Anything else you want to add before I wrap this up?
Yeah, whatever you're gonna do, if it's not podcasting, right? Like it's fine, and it's fine to have a podcast that's a hobby. It's fine to transition from hobby to profession. All of that's good. Whatever it is, paint, whatever it is, do all that stuff. Don't just work yourself to death and wind up 40 years from now going, "What would I do if I didn't work?" What you should do is build a life where you're like, "Man, I can't work anymore. The other part of my life is too rich, too sweet," and learn to figure out who you are by doing things, creating things. We love painting when we were a kid. Why did we stop? I loved recess. I took PE in college all the way through. The one semester when I didn't, I'm like, I'm never making that mistake again. I loved it, right? And so, how do you get physically active and stay? That's it. That's all. If we're going to talk about aspirational stuff, just figure out what it is that you like to do and do it. And if you no longer like it, do something else. But keep doing things that enrich your life, and because you'll enrich your life. So that's it. And I appreciate you. If anybody wants to watch a Break It Down show, easy to find. P.A. Turner Break It Down show, easy to find. If I'm your cup of tea, great. Thank you. I'd love to have you. And if not, hey, great. You know, go find the thing that is your cup of tea and fill up on tea instead of filling up on all the other things that are no good for you. And thank you to you, Elias. I appreciate you for having me on and letting me talk with you for an hour. It's always a blessing to be able to interact with folks and learn and just answer questions, because so much about combat, people are like, World War III is starting. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's really hard to start a World War III. It's hard to get out of war and it's hard to get into war, thankfully. And so don't be as afraid of the big world. Just go live in it, be in it. One of the advantages of being a Gen X person is, we do have that interaction. Yeah, the millennials, the digital natives, it's different, but you can build your own life. There are wonderful people out there. The world's not out there to get you. Yes, you're to get burned every now and then, but that's not what you live life like that. You live life by going out and living it. So go down and go meet people, know who your grocer is, talk to these people, because life is better than that. And that's it. I'll stop giving advice. Invest, 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 invest. You don't got to be fancy. Just get an index fund and keep going. If you're young, oh my God, that's the best advice ever, because you can't imagine how powerful it is to just get up to $150 a month, then get up to 300, then get up to 500, then just keep investing. Your future self will say, man, thank you, future or past self, for doing this for me. All right, I'm really shutting up now. Thank you very much.
Oh no, no, no. This is great advice, people. You see, I'm not as nice. This is why you have that's why I have guests on. Okay. You deal with sometimes a smart, snobbish me, and that's why I have guests on. They could fulfill the other part, or they'd be crazier than me. There's few that was actually crazier than me. I gotta say I enjoy those. I'm sure some of you are not gonna enjoy those. Maybe some of you will. Maybe some of you are a bit weird, but hey, to each his own. Find what you're good at. Seriously, take his advice though. Now I'm not gonna put on the serious hat, the mature hat. Take that advice to heart. Apply it as quick as possible. That's the only spice I can add to it. So, again, follow his channel. He has a YouTube. I'm going to put in the link in the description, and even his LinkedIn. But I'm going to prioritize the YouTube. I'm once I have some slow time, I'm going to be watching or just cherry picking stuff that's going to be most interesting to me. He has that much content. He has a lot of content, so content's not a problem. Maybe your attention span is, but it's definitely not content. Okay, so once he gets you the hook, just stay there and just embrace it, okay? Because this is stuff we need to hear more often. We need to hear more people that have military experience or even have geopolitical experience talk about this instead of just I don't know left and the right talking about their skewed version of this. That's why I criticize too. They're just like, oh, Israel could do no wrong, and the left is, oh, these Palestinians can never do any wrong. And look, it's overly simplistic, but you get my point. If you want to just put that in those short sound bites, that's what they are. You know, Palestinians victim, and then for generally the Republican in the Senate, some of the senators saying, "Oh, you know, Israel got the right to defend itself. Look how much they're surrounded by enemies, so they got to do what they got to do." So, look, I think he has the healthy perspective on it. You don't have to agree with everything, but hey, that's the beauty of America. My goal at the end of the day is not to get you to agree; it's to get you at least think different. It's like, aha, you know, and if you agree, that's a bonus to me, but that's something I don't expect. Just make sure you're leveling up your knowledge, your even critical thinking. Don't just trust anything that you're being fed to or you're being told because a lot of it's skewed. We already said about ABC, great example. I could throw in CNN, I could throw in MSNBC, I could throw Fox News, Newsmax, I could throw a lot more in there because I consume that stuff. Especially thanks to ground news, it makes me more efficient on that front. So, or the Hill, they all got their perspectives on it and skewed one way or the other. So just check his stuff out. And yes, you may have a sigh of relief. No plugins for products or free or low cost. Well, I'm gonna break that promise real soon. Let's just start shoving my podcast. Not Pete though. He gets all the credibility there. Me, I'm going to destroy mine because I don't care about it as much. With that being said, now for my podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, share this with someone who you believe will benefit tremendously. Okay, and it's going to be on Rumble eventually, maybe a week or a few days from now, depending on how I do. It's a one-man show. I do a lot of the stuff, believe it or not. And I'm going to have a website soon. And speak about the website, I'm going to give you a link how to get a free to low cost website. You'll be helping me out. You'll be paying me while giving me money. How is that possible? Click on that link. That's how. Okay. So if you don't want to donate, that's your way of giving me money without actually you giving me money. Okay. So just do that. Especially I know it's financially tough for some of you. So that's something I'm going to shove down your throat. And join a new paper if you want straight, brief news with no political slant. Join a new paper. Join that new paper. The longest read is 5 minutes. That's if you're into reading everything. But if you're into just reading just politics, sports, international, national, it's going to be even quicker than that. Okay. Even quicker than that. And join Podmatch. I can't stand guess who don't got Podmatch. I'm going to be honest with you. I got to look through that thread of emails. And when they make a mistake in their freaking first pager, right? Their PDF, they got to redo it and send me another one. It's a mess. Join Podmatch. It's a great system. It's organized. It's easy to use. And it's low cost as well. Especially if you want to go for the higher tier membership. Yeah, just do that because I have dealt with guests who use Podmatch, and I'm spoiled. I can't stand looking through thread of emails just to see what they want and all that. And sometimes I even ignore it because you're not a Podmatch guest. I treat Podmatch guests better, if you could tell by now. But some of you who are great guests and don't have pot match, join pot match. Join the cool kids club. All right. Stop being an outside. Stop being a vagabond. Come on, join the cool kids club. You got what it takes. All right. Just join it. All right. You have a one pager template set up for you, and you could adjust it on the fly, refresh. It'll be done. Okay. So just I don't know, converting the PDF into a Microsoft Word and a in PowerPoint, and then you gotta re-upload it and just re-PDF and send it to me. Come on, that's a lot more steps. You just click, type, that's it. Boom, done, save. Simple. All right. Okay, now was enough of my capitalistic shameless plug-in right there. So, whenever you complete this audio or visual journey, you have a blessed day, afternoon, or night.